Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome. This is our 41st Q&A. Yep. So I think we'll just jump right in. The first question is from Jabulo. I was recently reading the Apostle Paul's letter to the Colossians. Now that I understand the teachings better, I see that chapter 2 is one of the clearest teachings in the New Testament around transcending elementals through the power of Christ. He's referring to Colossians 2, verse 8. But it was the verse below that really caught my eye. Colossians 2, verse 18. Don't be cheated by people who make a show of acting humble and who worship angels. They boast about seeing visions, but it's all nonsense because their minds are filled with selfish desires. Now that's just like a real important statement, especially for nowadays. You see this in spiritual circles all the time. I know that we don't just, he continues, Jabulo continues saying, I know we don't worship angels in this system, but please, could you share your insights on the deeper meaning of love? When does engaging with the archangels cross the boundary into worship? And what are the selfish desires mentioned beyond the obvious of seeking power and clairsentience as we engage in the exercises? Yeah, that's a super good point to focus on. And some people, I think they want to deceive others by making them think that they're more spiritual than they are by talking this way. But some people have been deceived themselves by their own egotism, and they have been convinced that everything they're hearing is angels, so they're always talking to the angels. But the real test, the real litmus test of this thing is, do they exhibit selfish desires? If you hear a person, talking like with tongue of an angel, as St. Paul also says, but they still have these selfish desires in them, you know that person isn't as high as they're projecting themselves to be. Because the first order of business is to clean up our lower desires and emotions. So we have to not be deceived, as Paul said. We have to, which means we have to observe, right? We have to discern. We have to discriminate. Is what the person is telling us reflective of how they are being? So this is an important thing to do. And of course, we don't worship archangels. And the other question in there was, where does that cross the line? Well, we are in reverence of the archangels. That's not the same as worshiping. Worshiping, maybe you would think of it as putting them up on a pedestal, or bowing down to them. They don't want you to bow down to them, and they don't accept that from people when they do. It's kind of like a false pretense about reaching the archangel. They don't care. They just and a lot of people, we hear about channelers. The channelers are always like this, and they're talking in some stilted voice. When you talk to the archangels, you don't talk to them like that. They don't talk to you like that. And these higher entities that are guiding human beings, and there are higher entities guiding human beings, they don't talk like that either. They talk like we talk, only much clearer and succinctly and very wisely. But they don't talk in some stilted voice in a strange way. It's just a conversation. It's just like when you went to Despots. There wasn't a lot of genuflexings or strange behavior. You just talked to him. He was like your best friend. You just talked to him like that. So this is the kind of approach to the archangel. Now, back in the day, the word worship doesn't mean what we think it means now. The word worship really meant approach. So when we worship God, the true meaning of that is to approach God. And it's the same with the archangels, not worshiping them as greater beings than we are, but we are in reverence to where they are. Now, of course, we're living in a state, most human beings are living in subconscious level, right? That's one of the lower levels of consciousness. But the archangels enjoy super consciousness, which is something just imperceivable. You can't understand that as a subconscious person. But they use this higher state of consciousness, and they communicate from that higher state. So think of yourself when you're working with these exercises in the archangels, is you're just approaching a friend. And they are friends. I mean, that's what happens in the beginning. You start to get to know them, but after a while, you start to understand what you and they are doing is developing a friendship, not unlike a good earthly friendship. You first, you talk, and you come to trust the other one a little more, and then you start to feel familiar with them, and you trust them. So that's what has to happen when we communicate with the archangels, this reciprocation of trust to each other. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Hi, Jablo. This is a really good question, and this is very important threshold. Once we develop what is called spirituality, raising up the consciousness and the self-awareness to a certain level, we still have the risk and many traps to fall in, to be deceived by certain power or ability which someone who seems to be very developed and expressive, showing the phenomena to people. We are very much attracted by the power of the phenomena and ability of the person, and try to worship the person or what they call archangels behind them. So this letter to the Colossians is probably to people who is called I don't know the English. I don't know how to pronounce the English name, but Laodicean. What do you call the Laodicean?
Show me.
Laodicean.
I can't understand it from your words.
This is it.
The ones they've been warned.
Yeah, Laodicean. Laodicean. Am I pronouncing well? In Japanese, it's called Laodicea. But the people living in that place, anyway, they are developed to a certain level. Their consciousness and self-awareness are developed to a certain level, but still, it's not really perfect. And we have to be careful to overcome this stage of the level of consciousness and the self-awareness. And I try to find the answer somewhere in this chapter, that I could find a very good answer from the next chapter. You mentioned about the chapter 2 of Colossians, right? And the next chapter, in chapter 3, let me read chapter 3, verse 12 to 15. It says very good answer in it, I think. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your heart, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. I think this is a very good answer. Once we overcome to seek the ability or power of the phenomenon, the next stage is to love each other and love God in us and love God in other people and love other people as we like to be loved. So this is the ultimate stage of our spirituality which we should aim to reach. Not the power or the ability, but unfortunately, many people tend to be in the trap to seek the ability and the power by causing the phenomenon. This letter is a great warning for us and not to be in that pitfall on our spirituality. And as Daniel said, Archangel, we have to thank to them. And we show reverence to them, but we don't worship them. And they never tell us to worship them. If they force us or ask us to worship and follow whatever they say, they are not the archangels. They are fallen ones. Have to be very careful about this threshold. And as the seekers of truth, our aim is to be the co-creator with archangels, co-creator with God under the divine plan. So we never need to worship anything, anyone or anything.
Next question is from Bruce. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Daniel and AKI. The last Q&A had a wonderful exposition on a few of many, I think, meanings behind the numbers contained inside parts of the teachings and meditations. Thank you, AKI. I was wondering if you could present information on the 12 disciples of Yeshua Emmanuel the Christ, Joshua the Christ, and the meaning behind them. Why were there 12? Is this linked to why we have wound up with 4 Gospels in the New Testament and not 12 Gospels, one from each apostle? Well, on that point, we do have more Gospels, but the powers that be, when they, I don't want to say hijacked, but when they took over Christianity, they decided what books that were available to leave in the Bible, put in the Bible, and to leave out. So they threw out the book of Thomas, the disciple Thomas. James had his own book too. I think, and Mary had her own book. I think many of them had their own books, but the powers that be decided which ones to put in and which ones to leave out. And of course, they put in the 4, but 3 of the 4 have been massaged to come out to say virtually the same thing in the same way. John's is the only one that stands alone. And, of course, John was the closest to Christ in terms of understanding what was happening and who Christ really was. But I'll continue. You implied some time ago that each apostle was illustrated by a certain way by Da Vinci, 4 groups of 3, and that the apostles were linked to 12 principles of heaven. Forgive me if I use the wrong term here. I realize a principle may mean something else in the teachings, and what are they? Just a few words or any number of words, maybe as high as a factor of 12, if possible, would be appreciated. I realize that it's something best spoken around Christmas, but we kind of missed that last Christmas, so if possible, it would be great. Nowadays, it feels like any day upon which one has something to be grateful for is a day that should be considered Christmas. That's very nice. And part of these teachings is in finding something to be grateful for each day. I hope you agree. God bless. Thank you for sparing your valuable time to do these talks. Yeah, the 12th thing is very symbolic, of course, and it represents a whole. So we have Christ with the 12 disciples. We have the earth with the 12 zodiac signs. In Revelations, we have the 12 gates to Jerusalem, the heavenly Jerusalem. And even in ancient Egyptian, pre-Christianity, the Greeks, they had the 12 gods of Mount Olympus. Now, most everybody, especially today, think of these as different gods. But to a real practicing mystic in the mystery schools, they knew it was 12 aspects of the one God. Kind of like how the Hindu have all these different gods, but they are all aspects of one God, or faces of a diamond like. So the 12 is considered a whole. It's very important. And the virtues, before Christianity, Plato came up with the 4 cardinal virtues, the 4 principal virtues, right? And it was justice, prudence, temperance, and fortitude. And then later in Christianity, they started adding to them, and they ended up with 12. But not everybody's list of 12 are the same ones either. So, but you can take the disciples and think about each one of them. And this is not dogma. There's no dogmatic thing. It's not written in the Bible. It's a symbolic understanding that one of each of the disciples represented some quality, some virtue. For example, Peter had courage, He was strong, had fortitude, and Christ built the church on him as a rock, they called it. John, with love. Sorry, got that.
That's what
I turned off that volume.
That's why.
Okay.
Did you turn it?
I'm trying to, but it's won't let me. You turn it off. Pause. Anyway, so Peter was strength and courage and fortitude, whereas John was love. Thomas was discernment. So you can go through them like that and find their quality. You have to wait till it stops raining. Now I can turn it down.
Okay, now it works. Continue.
Thank you. So you can think of the disciples as that way, as representing these 12 higher virtues too. So, but the 12th thing is very important. It's seen as a whole system, a whole thing. And even if you watch or read the New Testament, Judas hangs himself. So one of the disciples is gone. So they immediately have to get another guy to fill his place. That was Matthias. And he became the 12th disciple after Judas hung himself. So it's important to keep that wholeness, that integrated wholeness of the number 12.
Thank you.
And in some versions of the old ancient times of the symbol of life, they had 12 centers in it. We only use 10, but they had 12. So 12 is a very powerful number. Aki?
Oh, you talked most of what I was going to say.
I guess we were one mind.
But in some part it might be overlapped, but I will explain my answer. Yes, 12 is very important number. It's the force of divine, the power of life as expressed in the world of existence. Especially in this dimension, we have a space. And this space is created by this principle. So, 12 disciples of Christ, and please, to avoid overlap of the explanation, please take a look the archive of our Q&A last time. But the 12 is the manifestation of the power of life in this dimension. And it's relating to everything because it's a principle of the power of life. So we can see this power of life in directions, as I explained last time. And also, principle is symbolized as the 12 disciples with Christ. Christ is a central point, and the 12 directions around him. And also, as he mentioned, the 12 gods of Olympus in Greece. It's also 12 different aspects of God, of one God. So it's not separate God, as Daniel explained. It's one God, but the many phases. And it symbolizes how human beings function on this earth, and also the power, how all the powers are relating each other. So to study zodiac sign, to study the numbers, and we have a 12 month in a year, right? 12 zodiac signs, 12 gods in Olympus, 12 disciples of Christ. We can meditate on this number a lot based on the principle of numbers. And as he says, in ancient era, the symbol of light was consist of 12 centers. It's relating to it. So when we study, now we have 10 centers, but the very, very old time, he had 12 centers above one, the below one. And it's a deep study on that too.
And the 12 centers weren't wrong. It's just a different way of depicting it.
Yeah. So 10 centers are now here. So, yeah. And he asked another question, 4 groups of 3, and they also, gospel. Yeah. You asked about the 4 gospels. Actually, and the 4 gospels, you say, yeah, nowadays the Gospels consist of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? But Saint Mark and Saint Luke they are not 12 disciples, so can't say it's not really relating to 12 disciples or not. But the number 4 is also a very important number, together with number 3. So 3 is, we already know, 3 symbolizes the Trinity, the divine, right? And 4, number 4 symbolizes the law of tetractys, originated in the law of duality, right? So number 4, according to your question, number 4 probably relating to this number of Gospels. If we study deeper, we might find some relation to it. But the number 4 means the law of tetractys, which means cross. But I don't know yet it's relating to 12 disciples or not. And the 2 of 4 Gospels are not from 12 disciples. And one more, the four-sided pyramid. The four-sided pyramid is consists of 4 triangles. So 4 by 3 create 12, number 12. It's very interesting to study deeper on numbers. And one more thing. Are you okay to wait? Yeah. I mentioned about the Last Supper by Da Vinci. When I saw the paintings, I saw the 3 people together and 4 groups of 3 people together. I saw it like this way. And I saw the principle behind it. But in our daily life, whatever we see, when we really focus on something and observe carefully, focusing on the object, whatever we observe, when we go deeper, we can penetrate into the law, idea, or principle behind it. Like flowers, many flowers have the petals, right? Then when we observe very carefully, most of the flowers consist of a 5-pointed star or a 6-pointed star. Not everything, but many consist of that. And the center, there is a center in the middle. So whatever we observe carefully, we can access to this principle and laws and that type of idea by meditation. Please try. That's all.
Okay. The other Gospels I was referring to, the Gospel of Jude, for example, Judas, there were found in the Nag Hammadi libraries, which is a group of extra-biblical texts that was found buried in Egypt. And this is after they buried it, the priests buried it because they changed the Bible, and anybody caught with these texts was put to death. So it was, dangerous stuff, but they also felt it was valuable enough to bury for posterity. So you can look at it, and a lot of the great Christian forefathers, like Origen, he thought some of them were real and some of them were not. So you have to be careful with it. But from my reading of it, I said the Gospel of Thomas is very good. You can feel Christ's words in his writings. Also, the Gospel of Mary has it's very short, but it has some really chosen things in it. Really, some really stuff that ties in with our teachings, if you can catch it. All right, the next question is, hi, Daniel and AKI. This is from Sharon. Hey, Sharon. I have been self-studying your books and materials here on Patreon for a little while, over a year. Will you give me some advice on what order to implement the Researchers of Truth practices as a beginner? I'm meditating, I'm doing the breathing exercises, and the daily review at night before I sleep, if I can do without drifting off first. I've seen people ask you questions about creating elementals for certain purposes and other practices, and it seems sort of advanced. It's not really. You're doing it all the time anyway, just subconsciously. We're teaching how to do it consciously. I'm not even sure what order to read the whale books. Thank you so much. Well, the whale books were written in a specific order. The first one is Swimming with the Whale, that gives you the idea of the teachings and some practices. The second book is now called Swimming Lessons with the Whale. And that's a good second book because it teaches you more in-depth stuff about the actual practices, not only what they are in Daskalos's book, but in this book's swimming lessons. It tells you why you're doing them and what it's trying to develop, and it gives you a lot more background to understand why you're engaging in these practices. The next one was diving with the whale, and the final one is you are the whale. So as far as the practices, the one and only thing Das Floss insisted on was the introspection every night. He was adamant about that. And it's the one that the researchers of truth give least attention to, it turns out. But he insisted on it because it's the most beneficial one. We're working to raise our consciousness and uplift our self-awareness. Well, most of the other practice, they raise your consciousness because you're visualizing, you're concentrating, you're doing these things to raise your consciousness. But the introspection is about self-awareness. It is the one practice that brings out and develops self-awareness for you. Awareness of your lower self first. You have to start there because you have to be able to separate what's the difference between your higher self or inner self and lower self. What's the difference between the personality and the soul, to say it like that. And you have to examine really both of them. Because right now you don't realize when you've fallen into the lower self and when you're maybe speaking from the higher self. So in the beginning, you need to do that introspection to sort of catch that lower self. Like, oh, wow, it did something. That's not what the higher self does. That's not the way a higher self talks. That's not the way the higher self behaves. So then automatically you start to see the difference, because what we're looking for is the soul self, the higher self, where that's what we're seeking to find. That's what self-realization is, and that's the aim of the researchers of truth. So, but in addition to that, he always recommended the 3 suns exercise, or you could use the good health exercise, which is pretty much the same. And it's the one where you visualize, you feel the energy and move it through your body, and you see a blue sphere or a disc, that's the solar plexus, a rose one at the heart center, which is a little bigger than the solar plexus, and then the golden one, or canary yellow one around the head. These balance our 3 bodies. We're doing it for a reason, and the reason is it brings them in balance. A lot of times we go through the day and we maybe are too emotional and not wisdom enough, not thinking enough. So doing these all together helps bring balance to the personality automatically. So it's a very, very important thing. And the other one we recommend, if you want to do another one, is in the middle of the day. So those aren't hard. Those are 10 minutes to 15 minutes, It's not asking a lot from you. But if you want to do another one, we recommend doing one in midday for somebody else. This can be just a prayer or a prayer with visualization. And we try to do something to help somebody in need that we know. Or just, it's especially powerful. And God catches special notice of it if you do it for someone who's causing you problems, someone you have difficulty with. Then that's a real sincere seeker to do something for others unselfishly. And it ties in with our promise to love and serve our fellow human being from the depths of our heart, no matter what their behavior is toward us. So this is the kind of thing we're trying to develop in us, the purity that develops in us that actually lifts us up as self-awareness and raises our consciousness to reach the goal that we're aiming at, which is one of the most powerful ones. Maybe it's one of the harder ones. It probably is one of the harder ones. But for some people, most people. But it's so important. It's so important. So at all times where you're doing a prayer or you're trying to do these things, the visualization element really empowers it a lot. It's really important to be able to train yourself to learn to see the things that you're meditating on and that you're trying to create. And that elemental, like I said, you're doing it anyway. We're just teaching how to do it consciously for a certain purpose and view it with a certain programming. I wanted to do this. But you're going around the daily life, oh, I'd like a new car. You've created an elemental for a new car. So, or if you know somebody that's in the hospital at this moment, and you think about them with love and care, that automatically creates an elemental that goes to them and helps them. So we're doing it all the time. And I hope that helps. Aki?
Beautiful comment.
Thank you.
Eyeshadow my advice is, my advice is to start with esoteric teaching and esoteric practice first. If you have those books, it's written by Daskalos, our teacher, please read those two books. And I presume at the beginning we can't understand fully. On the many places we will have lots of questions. But please don't be discouraged. And holding those two books, please explore Daniel's books and Patreon archives. There are so many good CDs, and Gates to the Light book is also very good. So please explore all the published books and whatever. And after exploring it, one day come back to esoteric practice and esoteric teaching. Then you will be surprised how much you can understand the deeper level. So my suggestion is place esoteric teaching book, esoteric practice book at your foundation and explore whatever you like. And come back to that book. And what you are doing, breathing exercise, 3 times exercise and introspection. Please keep up your good work. Those 3 exercises are very beneficial. Especially, Daniel mentioned already, introspection. Daskalos said the introspection meditation of the research of truth is introspection. He said so. There are so many benefits. Once we really engage in the practice of introspection sincerely, we will find and we will gain so much benefit by that. So, little by little, work on that, work on them all. And one more important advice. Please practice really in your daily life. Not just by reading the teaching or reading how to practice it. Just do it in your daily life. By doing, like a prayer he mentioned about, by doing exercise, practicing exercise in our daily life, it's something rather than just reading and accumulating knowledge or knowledge how to practice it. This is my advice.
And I say this to everybody, don't underestimate these beginning exercises, because in truth, they are the most important ones, because you'll never be able to do the others if you don't build the skills given in the first exercise. And don't think they're for beginners. Daskalos insisted that not only if you're going to do a visualization meditation, everyone should start with the 3 suns after the breathing exercise. And he says the 3 suns exercise is done by beginner and master alike every day. So, and you'll discover as you go into this, that 3 sun exercise, it's not just one thing. It keeps growing. And as you get deeper in the inner circle, innermost circle, and all that, there's more elements to it. But it takes you basic skill just to see it as a disc at first. Just see these 3 suns as a glowing disc. And then you can expand on that. And then those things bring other benefits as well.
It's just like building the house, the foundation. It's so important. With steady and strong foundation, we can add on it. On this regard, 3 suns meditation, breathing exercise, introspection. Very good foundation to work on.
Yep. Hi, Jonas. Jonas is asking,
Jonas?
Some say Jesus and Christ are 2 separate beings merged for 3 years. Is that true? No. Realizers often perceive everyone as already enlightened. The reason it's not true is because, people what happens about Christ is nobody, not one person, thinks of Christ or God or anything else as everybody else does. Everyone creates their own understanding of it based on what? What they know. But when what they know changes, their understanding changes. So as you get into this and go for a long time, everything changes. Your understanding deepens and expands and gets bigger and bigger. You still can't touch, human mind can't totally grasp God. So don't even try. It's like looking at the sun. You can't look at the sun with your material eyes. And in the same way, you can't, if you over-focus on your brain on God, it'll hurt you. So we just start to approach it as gently and simulate slowly. So he was not two people, or in two beings in the same body for 3 years. Christ is a pure reflection of God, the only begotten. And I know that sounds egoistic, but it's not. Because we were all there in the beginning. We weren't begotten. We were never created. That's why we call God absolute beingness. And you go through the creation story and blah, 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 on the fifth day, this is created, that's created. But as souls, we are not created. Spirit souls were not created. We are. We are those beings in absolute beingness. But we've descended. We've come into incarnation. We've gone through oblivion. We've gone through the pool of forgetfulness and don't know that. So this whole process is us raising our consciousness and self-awareness to the point where we realize it. We realize it. We maybe know it. We've read it in books. But until you realize it yourself, you don't own it. So that's the whole process that we're engaged in on Earth and in the worlds to come. So keep that in mind. So he says, realizers often perceive everyone as already enlightened, but I'm conscious of such. Is that true? Yes and no. That is true. We are spirit souls divine. We have a divine nature, and we don't realize it. Now, maybe a self-realized master sees that in you, but as a present-day personality, you are not that. You can't claim yourself as God. As a spirit soul, yes, you're God. But as a present-day personality, you're a creation. You're not God itself. And it's to say this because the nature is the same, the expression is not. And we often hear about, human beings are like a cup of the ocean. God being the ocean, and we're a cup of water of the ocean. That's a very good analogy. And he makes my point completely, because as water, if you test the water in the ocean, you test the water in the glass, exactly the same nature. But in terms of expression, that little glass of water cannot support the life the ocean has. It doesn't have the power the ocean has. So this is maybe a good analogy to think about the difference between those two states.
Daniel, is it possible to go one by one question? That otherwise he has kind of 4 or 5 questions.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
So can I answer?
You want to do one?
First, maybe.
I thought it easier the other way.
Oh, okay.
So then you can
do your own way.
Mm. Does Jesus Christ help all beings or only Christians? Well, of course, it's all beings. St. John was very wise in his gospel to put right in the beginning that Christ is the life, and in him is the light of all human beings. Not all Christians, not all people calling themselves Christians, but the light of all human beings. And it doesn't mean only the people born after Christ's time. It means all human beings ever that have been and are or will be born. And that light is consciousness and self-awareness. It's the light of the divine self within them. So, this is why we talk about the common selfhood. Ultimately, we all are just like cells in the body of Christ, or God, you could say. And so we have that life light as our very essence, as a spirit soul. The trouble is the personality is so often cut off from it. And that's what our work is. That's what we're trying to do by all these exercises and studies, is to clean that personality so that the light of the Spirit self can shine through. And of course, is it true that he helps only Christians? He helps everybody. I mean, everybody is himself. That's why when he's on the cross, dying at the last minute, he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they don't know what they did." Well, the reason he said that is because he saw them as himself. And it's written in the Bible now. I don't know, can't tell you why it's written this way, but I can tell you what Daskalos says. He didn't say, "Why have you forsaken me?" That's humans applying their understanding of what Christ was. What Daskalos claims he says by the Akashic records was, "Why have you forsaken me in them?" Because he saw them in him and him in everybody else. So that was the reference that he said on the cross. And really, forgive them, they don't know what they could do, what they're doing. Only a God could say that. Only God could say that at that moment when you're being tortured and crucified horribly, bleeding to death on the cross. And that's how he died. It was by a loss of blood. Just forgive them. Forgive those people who did it to you. Because you knew they didn't understand what they were doing. It's very, very powerful words. Does one have to be Christian to be saved? Of course not. Of course not. There were a lot of people saved before Christ, and there are a lot of people that have never met Christ that were saved in the sense that they'd realized their own true nature. That's what being saved means. Being saved from their lower nature by realizing they are that inner self. They are the true self. Is there a divine feminine and masculine, or do humans just anthropomorphize beingness? No, there are. That's what we see. The first appearance of God from the unmanifested state shows up as the Trinity. It appears. And in that there are three separate expressions. God the Father, which means the total wisdom. God the Son, which means the total love or total goodness. And God the Holy Spirit, the total power. Well, the Son, the Logos, Christ Logos, is the absolute expression of masculinity. Expression of the absolute masculinity, whereas the Holy Spirit is the absolute expression of the divine feminine. And that expression is seen throughout the universe in all female animals. So in this sense, we can say this is true of God, but it's also true of the archangel. They are neither male nor female, but have the ability to present either one. Where was I? Okay. There are so many different cosmologies perceived by mystics, Christians.
Perceived my mistake.
He means by.
Oh, okay.
And otherwise, Daskalos taught his unique cosmology based on his experiences. Are other cosmologies false? Is Kiki's description of the symbol of life. Kiki is one of Daskalos' long-standing top students. It differs from that of Daskalos. Will different mystics perceive the symbol of life differently? Should we trust our own experiences of it if it differs from Daskalos? That's a very good question. I like that question. Well, of course, different people have different experiences of reality, right? And from their different experiences, they paint the picture a little differently. They draw a different map to it. And it's exactly like those early explorers in the days of discovery. They came to America. And they saw Florida. They saw the eastern coast. And they went back to Europe and they drew a map. And none of those maps match, which means different explorers draw the map differently based on basically what they perceive. And what they perceive has everything to do with what catches their interest. Some were caught by the rivers more than the mountains. And so you see these different maps evolving or coming to pass. The interesting thing is, different maps, same reality. And that's the way it is with mystics. They perceive different aspects. And that's why Daskalos had made the most brilliant comment about the truth is like a brilliant diamond. And now you broke my coin. A brilliant diamond. The great light fills this diamond, and colors gleam from every side. Mystics, sages, and teachers of all ages and all times have been speaking of a different facet of a common eternal truth. And that's what mystics are doing. They're speaking of something they're experiencing. They didn't grok the whole thing, but they got something. So they teach what they understood. So it's not like everybody's wrong, although there are some false ones out there, but those people haven't experienced. They're projecting, they're imagining. Are we researching the truth or finding our own? That's a strong question. I like that, Jonas. Because it's like I just said a little bit ago, it's like whatever we experience and study and think we learn, we're making our own version of it. No one has the absolute truth. Everybody has their own version of what they understand of truth is. And again, that changes constantly as you go through life. And so, who you think you are, what you think reality is, and how you react to that reality is based on what you know. But when what you know changes, you change with it. And something new is created. And that new thing is the elementals of the new understanding. And so you incrementally go, boom, boom, boom. And I can tell you, after passing quite a few years on Earth, this really starts to accelerate when you get old. And you see things totally different. Things change their meaning about things, changes completely in some cases. Okay, let's see. I think
it's long. Can you just read the questions part? Then I can answer.
Did I finish it?
Did you finish?
I did. That's what I'm telling you.
So maybe I have to read from the first question.
No,
so you can read it.
Okay.
For me, then it's faster, I guess.
Some say Jesus and Christ are two separate beings that merged for 3 years. Is that true?
My answer is no. Christ Logos, a Son of God, passed through the archetypal idea of human being, idea of man, and was born as Joshua Emmanuel Christ, Son of Man, and lived in that period. So my answer is not. No.
Realizers often perceive everyone as already enlightened, but unconscious of such. Is that true?
From the viewpoint of a self-realized being, they know how much each person is developed, of course. Clearly, they know, and with their love, once we reach the self-realization, we become love itself. And unconditional love, I mean. So they see through each people's development, and they work on each person who they need to help according